Rain in the Face was a well-known hunk-papa Lakota Sioux warrior and chief who was famous for playing a crucial part in the historic defeat of Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer's 7th Cavalry Regiment at the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876. Rain in the Face, who was renowned for his valor and intimidating presence in battle, was also rumored to have a personal grudge against Custer because he felt that the latter was to blame for the deaths of his brother and sister in a previous battle. According to some reports, Rain in the Face was one of the fighters that faced Custer's troop during the legendary battle and might have even dealt the final blow that killed Custer. However, because the specifics of Custer's death are unclear, historians continue to dispute this claim. After the battle, Rain in the Face eventually turned himself in to American forces and served time in prison. After his release, he became a supporter of Native American rights and rose to fame by sharing his experiences during the war on Wild West shows. To help our community, please remember to like and subscribe to our channel before we delve further into his story. I'll tell you a story about myself if you're interested. Not all of me was the man you see now. Prior to using crutches, I was known for being a tough hunter and fighter with a harsh heart. The males avoided me out of fear, while the women admired me. I loved fighting more than I loved eating. When I was around, the ravens and crows would inspect their scalps every morning to make sure they were still intact, and the soldiers dreaded facing me. Everywhere I went, my name was spoken with anxiety and bore weight. Harry added at this point since he was aware of how much Indians like to brag about their accomplishments. Rain, Harry grinned and added, "We know you were a tough man. However, what about the time you were beaten by Tom Custer? How could someone as little as Tom Custer outdo you if you were so fearless?" Rain scowled hard as the question clearly unsettled her. Rain, who weighed 195 pounds and stood 5 feet 9 inches tall, was a massive presence in contrast to Captain Tom Custer's little frame. Rain paused, then started to tell his version of events. He didn't stop there, much to everyone's amazement. He continued by giving his account of what transpired at Little Bighorn. He brilliantly reenacted the events of that terrible day with impassioned gestures and unfiltered emotion. Government agents and Army officials had been trying in vain for years to get Rain to talk about the combat. They used every possible strategy, including threats, promises, and kindness. It was shocking when Rain finally broke his silence and gave his account of those events, which I'm recording exactly as McLaughlin translated it from his words. Rain started by saying, 2 years before that great battle, Gall and Sitting Bull had their camp at Standing Rock. All the Indians in our camp opposed the government. Even poet Longfellow wrote about him because of his legendary reputation as Custer's killer. They were defiant and fearless hunk-papa Sioux. The Yangtones, on the other hand, were amiable Indians who loitered close to the organization in the hopes of obtaining supplies and food. The hostile camp was a lively and active place to live. We danced, raced, shot, and played games during the day. We had enough of ponies and plenty of buffalo and deer to eat. The females liked me and would frequently tease me to get me upset. I wanted a fight when I was upset. I was challenged by a girl one evening to kill a white man at Fort Lincoln. At first, I turned down her dare, saying that with soldiers always on guard and re-scouts prowling close by, it was too risky. "A bold man knows no fear," she mocked me nevertheless. "Don't go if you're a coward. I'll locate another person who has danced in the Sundance and isn't scared." Her statement touched a nerve. The young males said nothing, but the other girls laughed at me. They were afraid of me because they knew I would kill them for making fun of me. I went back to my lodge, painted my face black, got a pistol and bow, and rode my pony because I was determined to show myself. I sneaked out of camp and rode 45 miles north to Fort Lincoln under the cover of darkness. I waited for a chance to murder a soldier for 2 days. During that moment, I could have easily slain a woodcutter or a Ree-woman. However, I wanted to show the girl who had made fun of me something more important: brass buttons from a soldier. She put the buttons onto her shawl as a token of my courage once I managed to gather them. I saw the storekeeper and a horse doctor on their way to a spring one morning. "Custer, you have long yellow hair." And at that moment, his guys were riding 100 yards distant. I sprang forward, grasping my opportunity. I used my war club to hit the horse doctor and then shot the storekeeper, before using arrows to kill them both. I then removed a few brass buttons from their uniforms. Long yellow hair and his guys were aroused by the sound of gunfire and came running toward me. I jumped on my pony and yelled for them to catch me as I ran away, not having time to scalp my victims. They followed me until I reached the Cannonball River. Since I hadn't signed the peace treaty, I was refused supplies when I went to the agency shop at Standing Rock the next winter. There were 30 troops with short hairstyles and the storekeeper, a man with one arm. They were outnumbered, but I didn't fear them. As the soldiers surrounded me, the storekeeper slipped up behind me. I was thrown into a wagon and restrained until we arrived at Fort Lincoln's guardroom. Instead of treating me like a chief, they treated me like an ordinary criminal there. I was given only one blanket for warmth and was confined to a room with chains around my legs. All winter long, I lay suffering in the cold, covered by snow that blew through wall crevices. One day, I was momentarily freed from my captivity by another soldier with little hair. Then the soldiers ordered me to flee, but they weren't giving me freedom. It was yet another survival test. As I raced, I was aware that they intended to shoot me in the rear. In order to warn him that I would get away, find him, tear out his heart, and eat it, I turned to Little Hair. At the time, I was shackled to a white man, but one night we were able to escape. As we ran, they opened fire on us, but we managed to hide along the Heart River's banks. The following day, the white man was apprehended when he cut the chains that bound us with a knife. Even though I knew they would find me, I managed to get away. Even they were hesitant to come for me due to the danger, but I soon went back to Sitting Bull and Gall. I emailed Little Hair a photo of a bloodied heart drawn on buffalo hide to serve as a reminder of my pledge. I did it to show him that I had not forgotten my promise. I followed through on my promise to win his heart when we next crossed paths. That's all I have to say. People were curious to learn about Tom Custer's heart, but the majority of what I've published is consistent with government reports of the Sutler and Surgeon Hunsinger's deaths. McFadden asked if the fight looked like the sketch he showed me of Custer's final charge. Our horses and ourselves for combat. We are not utilizing bows and arrows as depicted in this picture. By then, our weapons had improved. They had unreliable firearms. Before the shells become lodged inside, they could only fire once. On the battlefield, I observed scores of abandoned weapons still holding jammed ammunition. We knocked them down with our war clubs after realizing their firearms weren't functioning correctly. It was as simple as butchering sheep. While some soldiers pleaded for pity, we refused. Like all the white men's portrayals of Indians, this image is just another lie, I remarked. I then turned the paper over and sketched the actual events. I drew a big sideways S with a pencil to symbolize the Little Bighorn River. I clarified that our lodges were positioned like a bent bow along these riverbanks. Harry paused to inquire about the number of lodges. Many times 10, I answered. Between 4,000 and 6,000 Indians were there, and there were at least 1,000 lodges overall. Sitting Bull made potent medicine on a nearby hill before to the war, which was a significant contribution. He gave a motivational speech after bringing it back in a bag fastened to a coop stick. Although he promised that we would beat the soldiers, he said that the Great Spirit had revealed that they were approaching. His remarks made us happy. Our runners verified the soldiers' approach the next day. Following Sitting Bull's orders, the women used deserted lodges as ruses to trick the rescouts. In the meantime, the riverbanks, bends, and bushes continued to conceal our actual lodges. After that, Sitting Bull went to prepare more medication and didn't come back until the conflict was done. Despite being a great leader, he refrained from fighting that day. Even though I wasn't a head chief, I led a group of fierce hunk-papa warriors. Gall assumed command as head chief during the battle, while Goose led the Bannocks and Crazy Horse led the Cheyennes. We were ready for battle, knowing that the soldiers' horses were worn out and that they had been tricked by the empty lodges, thinking we were just a small group, but we were determined and ready. The soldiers made a crucial mistake when they divided their forces. In order to intercept them, Gall took the majority of our troops upriver, leaving us to contend with the long-haired re-scouts who remained. We seized the chance. Some of our young guys circled back to stop the soldiers' escape as they crossed the bluffs. The men rushed forward when we made our line visible, but they soon returned to our fire. Our young guys behind them, meantime, also started fire. I saw a few officers pointing and conversing, but they all appeared to be the same. I didn't notice long yellow hair then, or subsequently. The re-scouts began singing their death song. They were aware of their doom. Every fourth man held the ponies as the men dismounted, and the others got ready to battle on foot. Like a wave smashing into beach, we surrounded them. We started by shooting the people who owned the horses and then stampeding the horses with blankets. Our women captured the already weary ponies with ease. I had breathed the bitter smoke of combat and sung my war song. Anger was black in my heart. The way I fought was like I was insane. I hurried ahead and grabbed their flag in the midst of combat. I swiftly severed my pony's thong and jumped up when it was shot and collapsed beneath me. I knocked down the flag bearer with my war club and dashed back to our line, holding their flag. It was a courageous act, and as our fighters encouraged me, I felt proud. However, there was no time for relaxation. We were still fighting hard. My face was pelted with hot, nasty blood and brains. In a fit of rage, I shot, slashed, and killed everyone in my way as I stormed back into the battle on another pony. I mounted another pony after that. One was also shot out from under me. I remembered my promise to him when I noticed a little hair. I rushed forward recklessly, frantic and unafraid, believing that my white weasel tail charm would keep me safe. How many soldiers I killed in my attempt to get to him is unknown to me. He stood motionless in terror as he realized who I was, and I yelled and laughed at him. His lips twitched as though he was speaking, but his voice was muffled by the sound of the fighting. He was afraid. I used my revolver to shoot him when I was close enough. My gun vanished in the midst of the mayhem. It didn't matter where it went, I'm not sure. I got off my pony and kept my promise. Before triumphantly riding away with Little Hare's heart in hand, I cut out his heart, bit off a chunk, and spat it in his face. I was pleased and gave it a victorious shake. I had kept my promise. Now nothing else mattered. I never went back to the battlefield after that. Later, the ladies arrived to end the injured soldiers by removing their possessions and chopping off their boots to make leather. To remove rings faster, they even cut off fingers. My part in the battle was over by then. I had accomplished my goal. The hunt for Custer's scalp, or long yellow hairs, after the battle was unsuccessful. He had chopped his hair short and worn no uniform, so he was completely unrecognizable. We celebrated our triumph that evening with a lavish feast and a scalp dance. During the celebration, Sitting Bull spoke to us and declared, "I told you my medicine would work. It gave you courage." Gall disputed him, stating, "We did the combat," when he claimed credit for the win. "All you produced was medicine." Tension developed between the two leaders as a result of this dispute. We were unable to pursue and destroy the remaining men on the hill because of their competition, which broke our togetherness. The conflict between the two men over leadership split the camp, with some Indians supporting Sitting Bull and others Gow. Their argument didn't concern me personally. I took charge of my own team and didn't follow directions. I preferred dancing over fighting because I was tired of it. We soon found out that additional troops armed with heavy artillery were on their way. We went north and crossed the Canadian border to avoid more conflict. After pursuing us for a while, the soldiers eventually gave up. Until Sitting Bull returned to the United States, I stayed in Canada, and I accompanied him back. Being at home again felt fantastic. That's my tale. I'm happy I told you since I've never told white males about it before. Someone asked me, "If you didn't kill Long Yellow Hair, who did?" After I had finished speaking, I gave an honest response. "I'm not sure. Nobody is aware. Fighting in the dark was how it felt." Then came another query. Why didn't the others have scalped Long Yellow Hair? "No one is too brave to be scalped," I retorted. Despite their best efforts, the women were unable to locate his body. He had to have been concealed beneath other bodies. I called Curly, the Crow Scout who said he had survived the conflict, a liar when he was questioned about it. I said Curly wasn't in the fight. Early on, his pony failed, and he ran away like a coward. I am currently one of the few chiefs who can still remember the events of the Custer fight, and I am about 60 years old. Even though I can write my name in English, I don't really understand what it means. Even if my pronunciation is hard for others to understand, I can grasp the most of what has been spoken to me in English, despite having a small vocabulary of only 30 words. I, like many Indians, and more appreciative of favors in the future than in the past. Despite my valor in combat, people frequently doubt my integrity. But one thing is still true. I never break my word. However, getting me to produce one requires a lot of patience. I am still powerful and physically commanding at this age, akin to the romanticized Indian in James Fenimore Cooper's books. A unique first-hand account of the Battle of Little Bighorn during the Great Sioux War of 1876 is provided by my narrative. We appreciate your attention to this account. As we continue to share first-hand experiences of historic battles, stay tuned for more stories like this one. Enjoy your day, and I'll see you later.